evening, everyone, and welcome back to our almost second to last, actually, Spooky Scary Saturday. This week, we tackled Friday the 13th. Go ahead, make sure, do yourself a favor, and hit that subscribe button and that bell icon to be notified when I upload new videos. Also, if you are watching on Instagram, be sure that you hit subscribe, I believe, or whatever that button is, to make sure you have that notification for whenever I just post in general. Any likes, comments, things like that, sharing even on my stories, post, Spooky Scary Saturdays would be very appreciated on that format as well, since that is my main way of getting my business out into the community. I will be posting this and one more Spooky Scary Saturday heading up to our beloved Halloween. All right, and let's roll in with the spooky. Coming out in 1980, and people definitely credit Friday the 13th a lot for just kind of the creation of 80s slasher films and just horror films, and just it really started the whole franchise aspect of these slasher films, which, you know, obviously makes it go down in history. The creation of Jason and the legend and just that whole movie franchise in itself will always be one of the top tiers, and a lot of people, Jason is hands down their favorite slasher killer. He was mine, actually, for a good while until I fell in love with my, beloved Halloween, which we'll get into next week. The dawn of slasher, I like to call it. So anyway, jumping into the plot, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with it. So, it starts out, Camp Crystal Lake is the setting for pretty much most of the Friday the 13th movies. But in this one, there is a brutal history of murder of the counselors at Camp Crystal Lake.
We weren't doing anything, we were just messing around.
As well as the horrendous death of Jason Voorhees. When he was a child, he drowned while two counselors were off having sex, basically. And yeah, that had gone on, and then a few years after that, just randomly two counselors were killed, kind of, while they were off doing the same sort of thing. And so Camp Crystal Lake's history of murder, though, did not seem to keep the counselors from setting up camp again in the woodsy area. Superstitious locals warned against it, but they decided to go with the production of it anyway. And they brought in some young teenagers, it seems, to kind of be the counselors. And they're just basically setting up this camp that had kind of been abandoned a little bit for a while. That way they can set it up, going into the camp season and bringing on some campers. They then find themselves being stalked one by one by a brutal killer. As they're slashed, shot, and stabbed, the counselors struggle to stay alive against this kind of faceless opponent, so to speak, because it's set up in a way that it's almost like a whodunit kind of scenario. This first one kind of in homage in a way sort of to Prom Night, very similar to how you see Scream done. It's definitely you have no idea who it is at all, and it's actually done in such a way, I love it, it's brilliant. It's from the perspective of the killer, so you see them, slash and stab and, go all at whoever it is they're killing, but again, it's from their perspective, so we have no idea who it is.
Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
At all, until at the very end, after everyone has died, young Alice, the kind of, last girl, is head-to-head with Mrs. Voorhees.
How are you? Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
Jason's mother, who you eventually find out is the crazed killer going after everyone. She was so vengeful after the death of her beloved son, Jason. She has vowed to pretty much go after anyone who tried to reopen camp again on Camp Crystal Lake, and really she does not have a thing for counselors at all.
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday. Look what you did to him. Look what you did to him.
So she goes head-to-head with Alice, our last girl. Alice eventually beheads Mrs. Voorhees. Thus winning the battle, and kind of goes out to seek shelter almost in a way on this little canoe on the lake. And you see her the next morning with the beautiful, beautiful music, the leaves, the tree. It's actually a beautiful setup. Which I didn't know until recently after watching this documentary series on Shudder about the making of each one of the Friday the 13th, that they got the inspiration for that last kind of and most famous jump scare. They got the inspiration from Carrie. So kudos to that. And like I said, jump scare, one of the best ones. You see a young, disfigured, kind of not swampy, like little mini Jason Voorhees come out from the water and sort of brutally attack Alice. And then you see her wake up in the hospital. She is talking to the doctors, and she asks, well, what about the boy? What happened to him? And they, say, what boy? We didn't see anyone. You think it's a dream or something. She goes, well, then he's still out there.
Then he's still there.
Thus, it could have been on its own a standalone movie, but, as we all know, they did decide to keep on going with it. And I will say that Jason, for the most part, other than being rebooted once, I will say, well, that wasn't even a reboot, that was a remake. He's the only one who has had a franchise on him without any reboots, like Halloween. And even, I want to say, maybe Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy had this too, but in all Halloween, I feel like every time they keep going with something, they definitely reboot it and say, oh, that plot doesn't matter anymore. Where Jason, pretty much all of it stands. It's pretty much all canon, and it all happened, and that's Jason. So that is Friday the 13th, Part 1. Those are some things you may not have already known, but here are probably a few fun facts that you probably did not know. The original inspiration for the Friday the 13th movie alone was Halloween. In 1978, producer and director Sean Cunningham was looking for a model in which to build a commercial success film, and he found John Carpenter's horrific classic Halloween. The two films ultimately don't share much other than a very broad slasher trope in common, and just, a holiday name as your title. But Cunningham says he was very influenced by the structure of Carpenter's films, which I could see looking back on it. I mean, you gotta think, there weren't slasher films there, so what else are you gonna watch? So I get that. That totally makes sense to me. The film was being advertised before it even had any financing. Hoping to drum up publicity for his project, Cunningham took out an ad in the July 4th, 1979 edition, featuring the film's now iconic logo bursting through the glass. At the time, the general structure of the film was in place, but they hadn't quite gotten the financial stability for it just yet. And the release date was sort of like a dream, so to speak. Still, Cunningham did get a response from the ad. Everyone wanted to see this film, he later said. Originally, the screenwriter actually did not want it to be named Friday the 13th. They wanted something along the lines of, like, Long Night at Camp Blood, which kind of goes into the, future telling of it, sort of, like making it like a folklore sort of thing, but I think Friday the 13th is definitely why it has stuck for so long. Lastly, the camp used for filming is actually still open and operational today. Camp Crystal Lake is actually Camp Nobibosco, I'm so sorry if I just butchered that, a fully operational camp that the cast and crew were granted access to after campers left for the summer of 1979, and it is still in use today. That about wraps it up for this spooky, scary Saturday, and I will see you all next week for our last one.